Over 350 years prior to the Human Covenant War, another series of conflicts took place, not fought between man and some external threat, but instead fought between the fragmented nations of Earth and radical rebels in humanity's colonies across the Sol system. So today we're going to be looking into these conflicts and how they created the world of Halo that we know and love now. In the 22nd century, humanity had begun colonising the planets and moons in its own backyard. Throughout the Sol system, celestial bodies were to be settled on, with each colony founded, being sponsored and backed by one of Earth's nations. And for a while, things were going okay. There was some unrest and rivalry between nations and factions, but the United Nations wielded enough power to keep them in line. That was until two rival political factions, with differing extremist ideologies, rose to power in the colonies of the Sol system. The Kozloviks were supporters of the neo-communist hardliner Vladimir Kozlov, and they sought an end to the corporate and capitalist influence that the United Nations had been spreading throughout the newly founded space colonies. In response to the rise of the Kozloviks, a violent fascist movement known as the Friedens arose on the moons of Jupiter, backed by the unified German Republic. The tensions caused by these factions quickly erupted into full-blown conflict, when, seeking independence from the UN, the Friedens bombed an embassy and attacked UN colonial advisors. This led to 3 months of fighting amongst the moons of Jupiter between the Kozloviks and Friedens. Ill-equipped to face the first ever instance of interplanetary space war, the UN struggled to contain the situation, and eventually had to urge the nations of Earth to militarize and send their forces to Jupiter to put an end to the war. This was not easy, however, as the nations of Earth were not unified, and some of them even supported the warring extremist factions. This all led to the conflict that would come to be known as the Jovian Moon Campaign, being one of the bloodiest conflicts faced by humanity up until that point. And the fragile peace that followed the campaign was not to last, as not long later, conflict arose again between the Friedens and Kozloviks. This time, however, the war spilled onto Earth's own soil, with a 19-month-long conflict being fought across the continent of South America that would come to be known as the Rainforest Wars. Seeking to put an end to the rebel factions once and for all, the UN created its own powerful military arm capable of defending Earth and its colonies, the United Nations Space Command. And it was then that the years of conflict took a decisive turn, as the UNSC launched a swift blitzkrieg ground assault on heavy Frieden and Kozlovik positions on Mars, utilising the first ever space-based deployment of Marines to crush the rebel strongholds on the Red Planet. Buoyed by the overwhelming success of the Mars campaign and a massive propaganda effort, the UNSC was flooded with support and volunteers from across Earth and its colonies. This allowed the UNSC to deploy vast numbers of Marines, infantry and ships in one final campaign to annihilate the remaining communist and fascist strongholds. After 4 more years of crackdowns, the bloody 10 years of war were brought to an end in 2170, when the Callisto Treaty was signed by rebel commanders and UN colonial authorities. The UN emerged from this war with overwhelming public support, and in the face of concerns around overpopulation and a famine brought about by years of war, the nations of Earth agreed to unite under the unified Earth government and usher in a new era of peace, technological progress, and colonization amongst the stars.